I think one piece that I'm curious about is how did you go from like idea to, getting started? And that's, I think, where a lot of people get stuck.
Sure. I feel like building a business, especially in the very beginning, is like putting a puzzle together, right? So for me, when I'm building a business, especially in the very beginning, I didn't have the blueprint. I didn't have the entire roadmap. I had no idea what it looks like, honestly. But I just stayed really focused on what is the next step you need to achieve to get yourself to that next step, right? And that's how I approach building business. I feel like sometimes we can get overwhelmed when we're like, I don't know the whole picture. I don't have the whole plan. I've always entered, a project or a business without having the whole plan. And I think that's really key to getting started and really key to figuring things out. So just like a puzzle, like I would just look for like that next puzzle piece that I needed to just capture and lay down. And once I picked it up and I laid it down, I connected it to what I was doing, and I figured out what the next piece of the puzzle I needed was, then I would move on to that next piece, right? And so that's how I've approached building the business, from going from idea to action. And so to be more specific, I had this idea and I was like, well, what is the very first thing I need? I was like, I need to see if I can actually import coffee beans, right? I need to see if I can develop a direct trade relationship with a producer. And so I went to Vietnam and I visited my family and I asked my family, does anybody know anybody? And they're like, we do. And like they helped me strike up that first relationship. The next question was like, well, how do I bring coffee beans here? I start asking Google, how do you bring coffee beans to the United States? How do you import? And then Google tells you, well, you need this, you need to register the FDA, you need a customs broker, you need a freight forwarder. And then I'm like, what is a freight forwarder? And then you Google a freight forwarder, right? That's literally how I built the business. I just asked a lot of questions. I asked Google a lot. I focused on finding one piece of the puzzle at a time. Once I found that piece, I'd lay it down and look for that next piece until eventually I had my first pallet here, I had my bags here, I had everything ready to go, I had a website up, I had photos, and then I had a launch party.
Wow, you make it sound so easy.
In retrospect, yeah.
Yeah, in retrospect, exactly. But I mean, not everyone, you went to Vietnam. That's not everyone would take that step, right? People would get stuck right there. So I think your journey's pretty incredible.
Well, actually, you know what's really even more interesting about that trip? I wasn't going to Vietnam specifically for coffee. I was actually on my way to Cambodia to film my documentary that at that time for NBC. And because Cambodia and Vietnam were so close, I was like, let me just swing by Vietnam first to visit my family. And then at that point was when I started asking about the coffee farms, right? But it actually was very interesting. Like my journey in film brought me to Southeast Asia, and I just happened to have made like a pit stop in Vietnam.
All right, I got a couple different questions for you that kind of go off of the timeline and just into more of like life advice or more about you. So when you think back, I guess I don't know how old you are. Are you are you in your 20s or 30s?
Oh my gosh, no, I'm 35. I wouldn't feel confident building this in my 20s. Not that some people can't do it, but I don't think I could do it.
And so I guess that's my question is, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
20s. I feel like in my 20s, like being in my 20s, especially the part when I was in New York City and I was freelancing, and New York has like such this like energy of like, we're all out here hustling, we're all trying to make it, right? I was like really engulfed in the energy a lot, and I felt like I was rushing a lot in my 20s, like rushing to make it, or like rushing to prove something of myself, or rushing to have something to show for myself, right? So if I could, a piece of advice I give my 20-year-old self is, don't be in a rush, enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, enjoy everything you're going through, because it goes by really quickly, right? And then it gets a lot harder. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Don't be in a rush.
That's great advice. And I can relate 100% with that. Everything feels like a rush often. So I got to pull it back some days, right? Do you have any daily habits or rituals that you do?
Yeah. Um, Daily habits or rituals. Let's see. Well, I definitely drink coffee every morning. Daily habits or rituals. In the mornings, I like to really take my time. I wake up like maybe around between 6 and 7 a.m. And I just really enjoy my morning, whether it's, sometimes I'll take a cold bath, or I love just like, I'll either take not a cold bath, a cold shower. I'll either take a cold shower, or I'll just wash my face with cold water. I just love the feeling of like stimulating like my cells and my body and my brain with cold water. I love to make coffee in the morning. I usually have a coffee routine here. Usually do like a Vietnamese latte with like a double shot of espresso, and using our Vietnamese coffee beans, some steamed milk, squeeze sweet condensed milk, not too sweet. And lately I've been adding collagen powder, not for flavor, but more for the benefits. I do spend a little bit of time in the mornings catching up on my phone, because I kind of unplug my phone early at night, and then during the daytime, I really don't have any time to be on my phone, to like either be on social or like check the news. I'm just working a lot during the day. So in the mornings, I like to do a little bit of scrolling. And then occasionally I'll do like my morning stretches for like 5 minutes.
When it comes to your coffee, I think it's mostly sold within stores, right? Or do you guys have a physical location anywhere?
We do not have a physical location. We are an importing and roasting company. We're sold primarily online and through wholesale.
What's the percentage like? Is it more online, or is it 50-50?
Yeah, it's more online. It's about, I'd say like 85% online right now.
What have been your greatest failures, and what did you learn from them?
Failure. I guess if we're talking about failure in a traditional sense, we didn't get into this, but I guess if we're talking about failure in a traditional sense, one of the things that I did work on in my time in New York before starting New One Coffee Supply was I helped open a restaurant, a really small, fast casual Vietnamese restaurant here in Brooklyn, which I'm no longer part of. And definitely not a failure in my eyes. Definitely not a failure in my eyes. It was such a great learning experience. I got so much great value out of it. However, I'd say like in that experience has made me such a better entrepreneur for my current company, right? And I'd say, some of the lessons that I learned from my first restaurant business was to get really clear on what you're doing and why you're doing something. And when it's no longer working, we have to reevaluate, right? I think there were lots of moments in my restaurant journey where things weren't really working, and I felt like I didn't want to let it go.